welcome to Keyframers, the animated collaborative coding live stream where we bring imaginative user interfaces to life. I'm your host, Stephen Shaw, but you may know me as @Shashaw.
And I'm your host, David Khourshid, also known as @DavidKPiano.
Together, we are coding compadres, animation amigos, Boolean buddies, and keyframe companions, and today, twins, apparently.
Yes, we are.
Sent out a memo.
Yeah, so today we're going to be following up on an animation challenge, sort of, from scratch live today using, of course, HTML, some CSS tricks, and a little bit of JavaScript.
Yes, it is very exciting. This show is made possible by your support. You can pledge at patreon.com/keyframers. Hit the like and subscribe buttons around the video. And we've got some additional links available below, including to our merch store at keyframe.rs/merch. You need to check that out, and you can get cool shirts like this. But we have stuff other than just our logo to check out. If you're a fan of development or a fan of us, then you can support us that way.
Yeah, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have, so please reach out in the chat or comments.
Yes.
Right here.
It's other side, I think.
What if they have a right to left display? You don't...
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you're reversed, then there you go.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you're watching this later on YouTube and are short on time, you can skip ahead to the animation summary we have at the very end using the timestamp link below for Keyflections in the description. And if you're joining us live, thanks so much. We're gonna have a fun little journey today.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so dive right into the challenge here.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch over. All right, so this was a tweet that came to us from Charles asking about the best practice for doing a draggable event. He's specifically asking about React, but we're just taking a little more vanilla of an approach here that will apply to this as well. I'm curious if there's a cleaner way to do it with on-drag start and on-drag end events.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's the thing. We're not going to be using those events. Instead, we're going to go with a more generic approach. You could use on mouse down, on mouse move, and on mouse up, but you could also use on pointer down, on pointer move, on pointer up if you do want to support those touch events. You don't need to use drag for this, and we'll talk about that in a minute, even though we are doing drag.
Right. So yeah, we've done some calendar related stuff before. This is one of your fancy pins that
yes.
we'll share there. The CSS only calendar app concept. So you can actually select a day and select an end date, and then you can change the color. This pin is a work of art. It's beautiful. And there's no JavaScript. Yeah. You just checkbox hacking.
Yeah, checkbox hacking, basically. But that's also the crux of what the solution for this challenge is going to be. Because the way that this uses checkboxes is there is one date that's checked, of course, and another date that's also checked. So what we do is we use adjacent, however you pronounce that, adjacent sibling selectors to select all of the siblings between the first checked one and the last checked one. And then you do special coloring for all of those.
Right. So there's a little bit of the adjacent selection happening to show a little bit of what's going on. This one definitely requires a serious breakdown.
Yeah, that was written by me like 4 years ago, so please don't judge.
Yes.
Years ago.
We're much better now, I promise. It's an amazing one, and we also did an episode on calendars. Do you remember this one at all?
I do. The
CSS only calendar conundrum.
Yes.
Yeah, back before we even green screened. So yeah, that was a really fun one where we were animating like the borders between the dates. So that was fun. But yeah, check those out if you're interested in calendars. As for today, so kind of in response to this challenge by Charles, this question by Charles, we're gonna approach it more from like a date picker kind of perspective, but it's the same idea. We're gonna have like you select a start date and you select an end date, and you can do that with like a drag event or a drag like motion as well. So we're taking this dribble by Anthony Foman, just called mobile calendar behavior, just as kind of a starting point for us to have a visual style to this this date picker.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't know, this calendar comes from Google Calendar. So
is this a direct copy or the tweet, you mean?
Yeah. So that's definitely Google Calendar there for you.
Yep, looks that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool.
And so Google Calendar on the web, if you notice, it has that behavior where if you drag over a few days, then it will show that blue box where you could create an event that spans multiple days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's the primary functionality of that.
That's very handy. Nice little convention. All right. So yeah, should we start coding?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Cool. I did just a very basic setup here to get us a calendar. So the HTML, I used a emit abbreviation syntax. If you don't know what emit is, it's just kind of a short form way of describing what you want your HTML to be, and then you hit tab and it expands that, or some other kind of keyboard shortcut, and it expands that. So here we have 31 days, and then it's giving a day-to-day attribute to each one, and then within that we have a span with the class number, and that index of it is in there.
Yeah, so let's talk about how we're going to use data attributes in order to show like the just spanning between days. So I'm going to actually go down to this day number 8 over here, and let's say that we have data selected equals starts here. So just imagine that happens somewhere, not sure where, but let's also add a data selected equals end to day 13. So you'll notice in the calendar we have 8 is green and 13 is red, and that's because in the CSS we're targeting those with data attributes and coloring them thusly. But now the challenge is, how do we get the days in between to be colored? So here's how we can do that. Data selected equals start, squiggly, and remember the squiggly means adjacent. How do you pronounce it?
Adjacent.
Adjacent, okay.
Adjacent.
I've been pronouncing that wrong my whole life.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'm just telling you how it's supposed to be pronounced, yeah.
Well, at least on this show. We have rules on this show.
Yes.
So this is the adjacent sibling selector, and what that's going to do is it's going to style every single, well, we could tell it what to style. So every single day that is following this data selected starts day. And so we could just, call this background color teal, blue, whatever. And you can see that sort of overflows. So what we want to do is have one more and dot day, and just make this background color transparent. And then it will only go up to that day.
Right. Due to the aggressive nature of this, since this is a little more higher in specificity, we need to move our data selected end down here so that our red color comes through.
But it doesn't, because we're still being more specific over here. So there's a few tricks for this. I mean, you could do that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty terrible. Or you could just do important.
I like upping the specificity a little bit just by repeating a selector in that way.
All right.
It's just easier down the road if you need to actually override that than making it important.
Yeah, and remember, the reason we're doing this is because CSS doesn't have a built-in way to go like select all these elements between this and that.
Right.
Unless we had like some sort of CSS SQL sort of thing, but I don't think that that's coming anytime soon. So
right, I was thinking for a moment you could do like not data selected and
you know what you could do? I know what you could do. Yeah, day not data selected. Yeah, exactly what you said. And then we don't have to have that specificity problem.
yeah.
So
It still doesn't help with the with setting the ones after it though, and then that actually messes with the specificity
well,
there.
actually, yeah. So what? Oh wait, you're right.
Yeah, so I think we just double up the specificity here and do the exact same bit we were.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, that
works.
this is the basic idea of how we're going to tell, how we're going to display which one's the start, which one's the end, and showing the selection in between. And
I'll probably come up with better colors for this.
right. For now, this is just a basic approach. We'll kind of use that as a starting point. All right. So do you want to get into like the JavaScript side of it now?
Yeah, let's go into the JavaScript side. So drag interactions are actually a lot simpler than you might think, because you could think of dragging as being in two states. You're either in some sort of idle state or you're in some dragging state. And the way you go from idle to dragging is you would have something like on pointer down. So once your pointer goes down, and remember the pointer is either your mouse or any pointing device like a finger or a stick, if you could use sticks with your computer, that's your pointer. And so when you're on pointer down on something, that's going to transition from the idle state to the dragging state. And while you're in the dragging state, you could have on pointer move. And that's just going to update some sort of data, but you're still in the dragging state. So in order to get out of the dragging state, you have to have some sort of on pointer up event. So once you release your pointer, that's going to take you back to idle. Now, the reason that we distinguish between the idle and dragging states is there's going to be different behavior for each. And this makes things really simple because we're going to be listening to on pointer move for basically every single day. But we want that to have a different behavior based on whether we're idle or we're dragging. So when we're dragging, we actually want to keep, Shaw added some data day attributes here. And so we want to keep those in memory somewhere, like just saying, which one are we currently dragging over? But we don't want that to happen when we're not dragging, right? So.
Yeah. Now, on pointer move, another option would be on pointer, wait, sorry, what is it? On pointer over might be better because that won't fire continuously.
Okay, yeah, that works. Yeah.
We'll try that. Try both of those if we run into any trouble. But yeah, that'll be.
Yeah. So let's do this with no libraries, just because Shaw told me not to.
I said no such thing. I was.
No, but you don't need a library for this, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
So let's call this we'll call it data. So what do we need to keep track of? We need to keep track of the start state. It's null for now, and the end dates, which is null for now. And I think that those are the only two data points that we really need, right?
Yeah.
So far. Okay. We also need to keep track, or not keep track, but just get a reference to each of these days. So const date else equal document.query selector all data day. So
all day.
Yep, all day. Ooh. All day. That's confusing. Or actually, all day else. Best of both worlds, right? And the idea is we're going to be attaching event listeners to each one of these and updating the start date and end date, but only when we're dragging. That's the key.
Yes.
So let's make a simple state machine. So const machine, which is my favorite phrase. Our initial state is going to be idle. And remember, we're not using any libraries. So right now, just think of this as me creating a very, very simple object. And we're going to have, of course, two states like we discussed. We have the idle state, and we also have the dragging state. Okay. So in the idle state, we need to handle the pointer down. And that's going to take us to the dragging state. Now for dragging, we're going to have pointer move. I'll let you do that, Shaw. And pointer move just does nothing. It just, we're still in dragging. So yeah, we just have that as dragging.
What? Oh, right.
Yeah. For pointer down, that's going to take us back to idle. And so just as an experiment, we're going to, well, let's add a send function. So send some event. And oh yeah, we need a current state. So let's current state equals machine.initial. We could have just hard coded idle, but I like having that in the configuration of the machine. So right now our current state is idle. And whenever we send an event, we want to update this current state. And so the whole point of this big configuration object is so that we could just go through this object and figure out what the next state should be. So wait, did we say pointer over? Yeah, pointer over. Yeah. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Okay. So in order to read the next state, we return the from the machine, we have the current state and then dot on and then the events dot type. And that's going to give us our next state. But if we don't have any configuration for that, then we just return the current state. So current state equals machine. I think this is correct. So yeah, we're reading from the event.type. Yep, that should work. So just to test it out, let's see, we have these all day Ls.for each, day L, and then we have day L dot add event listener. We're going to have to add a few. We have to add what? Pointer down? Pointer down.
Yeah.
And I could just do send. Whoa, actually, that's really easy. So pointer over, pointer up.
Yeah, it's we're going to have to parse that event though, if you're doing it that way.
Why?
Because the event
it has a type.
Oh, event.type. Okay.
Yeah.
In theory, yes. This
yes.
should work.
Okay, so let's start dragging. So cannot read property on of undefined. Oh. Machine, sorry. Dot states. Forgot my object definition for a minute. Okay, so try dragging around the calendar.
Let me open up the console here so we can see. Yep, we're firing events.
Mm-hmm. And the state is changing as expected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So now what we could do is, because we have that event, the target of the event, we could also grab the, we could also grab the, what am I thinking? The event's target. And with the event target, we have that data day attribute. So now we have almost all the information we need. So here's a trick that I like to do when I'm being lazy. I'm not using a library, but I still want to use the state machine with all of the side effects and actions and everything like that. I'll show you over here in this pointer down. Instead of it being just a string, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it be a function that does a side effect and returns a string. So here I would just do that. By the way, if you use my xdate library, this is not the way xdate works, at least not now. Maybe in the next version, but this makes it really simple to use just this whole state machine thing without any sort of library. So I could say data.starts date. Oh wait, let me give it the events. So data.start date equals events.targets. By the way, I heard that there was an event.currents target or something like that.
Let's see.
There's a difference between event.target and event.currents target. Anyway, sets
let's see. Event.currentTarget, a reference to the currently registered target for the event. This is the object to which the event is currently slated to be sent. So I guess what you bind the event to versus what the actual element that triggered the event is.
Yeah. So
I
wonder what the browser support for that is.
Let's see. MDN does not have that date. Oh, there we go. Chrome, yes. Edge 12. So pretty good. IE 9 apparently. So
so we could use that.
We can certainly try it. I have no idea if that how well that works.
So, all right, I'll discuss this in a minute. So in the send events, we get transition, and the transition could be a function. So if type of transition equals function, then current state is going to be the transition with the data and the events that we got. Else current state equals transition or the current state if we don't have any. So thank you. So let's console.log. We're console.logging the events type, the current state. Let's also log that data because we're mutating the data. I know mutating is a nasty word, but we're keeping it simple for now. Go ahead and drag.
Is
everything awesome? Okay, so now we have the start date, which is whenever we put our mouse down. So now we just have to get that end date. I'm going to be honest with you. I actually really like this. Just shove a function in there and do stuff and return the next date. That's actually pretty nice.
That's not a bad. It seems like an event listener kind of thing would be interesting to have.
Yeah. So so for pointer up in the dragging state, we're doing a side effect where data.endDate equals events.currentTarget.dataSets.day. By the way, thank you for adding those dataset.days in there. And then return, it should go back to idle.
Yes.
Okay.
We also want the same thing with pointer over.
Oh, you're right. So we could just copy pasta that.
Yep, that should do it.
That looks like it works. Or for the most part, like we still have to figure out what if we drag backwards. But let's not worry about that for now. Let's just pretend that the user drags in one single direction.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we have all of our information necessary, and we just need the side effect of taking that data. So we get the current state, which might change the data, and then we need to those data selected things. Those need to change based on which state we have. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the HTML, just like that.
So let's see.
Yeah, we could just add it there.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So one thing we'll want to do is loop through all the day L's. I guess this needs. See,
Well, we
it
can,
feels a little messy. Like we should be updating the elements up here too, like in the on pointer down and pointer over.
yeah, if you want to.
Just in terms of grouping the actual logic, like when that start date is being updated and all that.
But let's do it here for now.
I just don't think it's going to work down here because we've got to remove data selected, but add it in as well.
Well, we could do this. Or
yeah, there you go.
And then they're gone. And then we have the data, and then so we could do document.query selector data selected or data day, equals data.start date data sets dot selected equals start, or it's start, right? End date end.
Yeah, so
should that work?
We're gonna get lots of null errors.
Oh well, yeah. We should probably do an if.
Yeah.
Oh, the joys of pair coding. Same thing, same time.
Yeah.
CodePen needs an auto formatter, like prettier.
It does have it if you select all and hit tab, I think, or shift tab, something like that.
Unexpected string. Where's our unexpected string?
I'm adjusting something. Let's see. Oh no, I want end date equals null. Set that up here. So the on pointer down, it resets that, and then on pointer up, that should do it.
This is working beautifully, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's see if user select is an inheritable property. It is.
What are you doing?
I put user select none on the calendar.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it inherits.
Cool. So one other thing. One other thing we could do, if not data dot end dates. If there's no data end dates, then we need to basically say that the start date is the end date. Oh wait, we can't really do that, can we?
Well, we would just set that up here. So data.end date equals data.start date, and that has the bonus of resetting everything.
Okay, yeah, that works.
Yeah, and that has the bonus of our adjacent sibling selector not going crazy. Not going wild. Sorry.
No, wait, whoa, sorry. I just freaked out for a minute because there's one thing that we forgot. So here's something interesting. This dale.addEventListener pointer up, that could actually be document, oops, can't spell document or whatever, body.addEventListener pointer up. And the reason we want to do that is because if we escape the calendar, we don't want it to keep dragging and doing that behavior. So
yeah, but we've got to change the pointer, the current target.
Yeah,
jump. Well, we can just remove that from pointer up because it's just being set by the pointer over.
You're right. Yeah.
So that solves that.
Cool.
Yeah, and so this seems like a complex approach, and there are some complexities to it, but the complexity is there because it is explicit. You are writing out exactly the states that it can be in, exactly what needs to happen at each particular state. So even if you brought this over to React or Vue or whatever framework or library, whatever, there's still that inherent complexity of it has to be in a certain state and it has to go to the next action from that state. So that's what a state machine is ideal for. You'll hear us harp on that all the time. But if you're just looking at it at first glance, you might think, wow, this is way too much for just, a couple of event listeners and all of that. But the advantage there is it's all spelled out and it's all made really clear what should be happening.
Right. So for example, let's say that you were tasked with doing this exact same thing, except you needed to use Canvas or something, like you had some sort of Canvas calendar. Then all of your hard-coded approach, that would just go out the window because you can't exactly use the same approach. So with this, it's just very generic. We're just setting data, so the end date, start date. Also, actually, before I lose my train of thought, and so that's why this is a generic approach. In terms of lines of code, any other solution would probably be around the same number of lines of code as this right here. And keep in mind, we're not using any libraries. So,
right. And if this was ported over to React, instead of a data object, we would be using set state for start date and end date, having those, and then instead of our update DOM function here, we would just be doing the same kind of update within React and through a loop through the days. So yeah, there's the overall approach of having a state machine control where the actual application is at any given point allows you the freedom of moving over to whatever system you want to actually build the UI in.
Oh shoot. So I try to do some logic. I guess it's not working. Oh wait, that's because that doesn't make sense. So data start date. Okay. Basically I'm making the functionality so that the user could drag backwards. Data.start date. So the date is the dataset.day. I wonder why this isn't working. Oh, that's why. Okay.
It's kind of working.
Almost, but we, yeah. Why are we not going backwards?
Math.min.
So the start,
math.max. So we probably need to write the end date first.
Oh.
And then the start date second. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah. Typical
logic trouble.
Yeah, typical mistake. But it's still being a little bit weird.
Yeah, so it's stepping backwards. Oh, because it's updating every on pointer over. So that's a bit problematic.
Yeah, let's see. End date, start date. Yeah, that's weird. All right, we'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer. Unless you could think of a way that we could solve that.
It works in some cases. I think there's just an issue with the logic there, where it's updating the start date too quickly.
Actually, you know what? It should not. Oh no. Let's see. Because the end date should, yeah. To do fix. Yeah.
Leave that for the next programmer.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
All right. So, how can we add a little bit of animation flair to this?
Well, that's a great question. So if we go back to this example, there's like a kind of filling in animation that's pretty great. But yeah, I think moving these kind of selected states to a pseudo element is probably a good approach. So we
could definitely do that. So right now I'm just modifying the background, and so what we could do instead is just color a pseudo element.
Right. So creating that pseudo element, it'll be on all of the days, and then you set position relative on everything, right? Nope, did not yet.
Did I? Wow, no, I did not. I am shocked at myself. I am ashamed.
Don't be. You should be ashamed about doing it. So this is something that we do often. Consult your team to see if position relative is right for you. Position relative is a great property. It's just doing it on everything that can be confusing if you're not used to it. But basically, this makes position absolute a lot more understandable about where the absolute positioning is actually going to come into play. It's just it's just the direct parent of it. So we've got that. So this should actually be the pseudo element here. This should be the pseudo element here. Pseudo element here. Pseudo element here. All right, so you're adjusting the radius of it. That's nice.
All right, so the selected and the days should have that. So we could just do this.
What happened to our background there? What is that off for you? Like the numbers are hanging over the edge?
Yeah, it's happening for me.
All right, let me go over into debug view here. Save. Fresh. Inspect these so we can see what's happening. Using CodePen's debug view to get a stable DOM. While David's making changes here. All right, so
just some coloring.
Where's my resizer? There we go. All right, so let's see. Why is the calendar element with 90%? That could probably be taken off. Okay. Yeah, I think it's just the width 90% that's messing with it. And then this, we can do the font size. Yeah, get it nice and big there. I'll scale everything.
Woo, big.
Nice and big.
This is max calendar.
We can scale it down a little. All right, where are you at?
Don't worry about it.
Okay, so yeah, data selected, and then the data adjacent selector. Color, inherit. Oh, that needs to be data selected, end. And one advantage of doing this in React or something like that would be to have like a class or a data attribute on the ones in between. You could do that a little more easily in React, but same concept here. Stop using rem, use m.
Fine.
And one thing I would do with that is actually set the so we would do data selected before, set the border radius in one spot, and then override the ones that you don't want the radius on with 0. So we would copy this up here. Whoa. Where are we? Yeah, so do that as 0, 0. And this makes it much easier to control in one spot. So border top left, bottom left. Okay, thanks for following, Jay. So yeah, that leaves us in a good spot.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing we can do is data selected. We can make this see. So if it's the same, yeah, we don't have a state for if the start day is the end day.
No, we don't. But you know what we could use? We could have data selected just be a string that could take start or end or both, and then we could, select that.
Right. Yeah. That could work. Hey, Santiago Codes. Thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime. If you all are interested in doing that, you may certainly use your Amazon Prime account to subscribe to our channel. Since Amazon owns Twitch, they let you support a channel with your Amazon Prime subscription. So thank you so much for using that. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to wrap here, though. You've got a hard end. So yeah, why don't we go into Keyflections?
All right, sounds like a plan.
All right. So yeah, let's keyflect. So we're now moving into Keyflections, a quick review of the techniques used to build this animation. If you have any questions, you can ask us in the chat. We'll be happy to answer.
Also, if you've enjoyed watching us so far, you could follow and subscribe here on Twitch or YouTube, or you can pledge at patreon.com/keyframers, and the links are available right below.
Yes, keyframe.rs/merch for all your hip, fancy merch. Do check that out. You will not be disappointed. Or if you are, order something anyway. Support us.
Yeah.
We'll appreciate that. All right, so anyway, today's animation is based on a challenge, a question from Charles asking about draggable events in React and using onDragStart, onDragEnd. And so what we've done is taken that idea and applied it to like a date picker, just for a little bit simpler of a UI to work with. So we're kind of recreating this idea from Anthony Foman, mobile calendar behavior, a dribble link there. You'll find that below. And so we recreated that in vanilla JS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Much work.
Yeah. So the basic HTML here, we've got a calendar with day elements inside of it. Each day has a data day attribute that's just describing what the day number is. And then in our real quick, that is all just laid out with display grid, and I've got grid template columns repeat 7 1FR, so it has the 7 days, and then they loop around like that. And this would make it easy for us to offset the first day if we wanted, because we could do day first child, grid template or grid column start 4 or something like that if it's a month with an offset first day, and all our code still works just fine. It's just changing that one, which is really easy, and you could do that from the HTML as well if you had some kind of CMS or something like that. Anyway, describe the JavaScript for us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Just trying to fix that annoying bug, but we basically created a very simple state machine over here. There's 2 states. We have idle and dragging, which I show here. We have idle and dragging. And each of these states behaves differently. In the idle states, when your pointer is down, we're setting both the end date and the start states to whatever the day attributes, the dataset.day attribute value is for whatever day that we're hovering over or we're dragging over, or that we start putting our pointer down over. I'm confusing myself at this point, but so for example, if you put your pointer down at day 14 or day 6, then the start date and end date is going to be 14. And then we move into the dragging state where we have different behavior. The behavior over here is when we have pointer over events, which means the pointer is going over certain elements, then we have to update the start state and end date. We still have to work out the math over here, but basically we have a start date and an end date is whatever we're hovering over if it's past the current day. So currently it only works if we're going to the right, but we could easily just fix our mistake and figure out how to do it going to the left. It shouldn't be too hard. Now, these transitions that I call could either be events or functions. The events, strings or functions. The functions over here, they update some sort of data that we have over here. And right now we're just mutating. It's the easiest thing to do. And they're returning what the next state should be. In this case, the state shouldn't change. Over here, like for pointer up, we are saying when we're in the dragging state and the pointer up happens, don't do any side effects, just go to the idle state. So you could think of these different states as do this behavior in this state and do different behavior in this state. And what I mean by behavior is that we're doing different things even though we're sending the exact same events all the time. In this case, for all of our days, we're sending pointer down, pointer over, and on the document.body, we're sending pointer up. So yeah, just a little bit of mutation, and Shaw wrote this update DOM function that runs every single time we have a new state, and it adds that data day and data selected, it deletes the data selected.
So on that, every time we update the DOM, we're removing the data selected attribute from all of the days via delete dataset selected. And then if we have a start date, if that's been set through our state machine logic, then we query for that day and we add the selected attribute there to start. And then if we have an end date, we set that to end. So we're showing this with just vanilla JavaScript, but this same kind of thing would apply with React or Vue or whatever. Instead of directly setting that data in React, you have these as hooks and use set state for start date and set state for end date there, and then in your loop, array loop or whatever for each of the days, you would then do that logic there, and that would allow you to use that data attribute in the JavaScript and in the CSS as well. So speaking of the CSS, so we've got our data selected attribute selector for the day element. Day elements, and then we're using a pseudo element to create that background that would allow you to more easily animate that in and out if we wanted to. We're just a little short on time, so we haven't gotten into the actual animation of it. But for the start pseudo element, we're doing border radius only on the top and the left, and then for the end one, we're doing the bottom left and top left, or the bottom right and top right.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then we're using adjacent sibling selectors to select all the ones following the very first one. So this would essentially be data selected start, all the days after, excluding the end. We're giving that pseudo element an opacity there, and then all of the ones after the end, we don't want them to have a background or anything like that, so they're just transparent there. So that's what allows us to have those kind of bookend start and end ones with the selected or the selected kind of look for the ones in the middle as well.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. Well, cool. I think that's all we've got for today. So, Charles, hope that answers your question a little bit. Instead of focusing on drag events, focus a little bit more on the state of the application and looking for when the pointer's down and then when the pointer is off, and that helps with that initial problem there. So anyway, close this out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've been watching Keyframers. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to see more from David and I, you can support us in many ways. Number one, go over to patreon.com/keyframers and pledge there to support us each month. That's a huge help to us. You can also visit our merch store at keyframe.rs/merch. Check that out. We've got cool shirts with our logo on them and without our logo on them. You'll like them, so check those out. You can also go over to youtube.com/keyframers and check out our channel there, where we have all of our past episodes and some Keyessential quick tips as well. So yeah, go do that.
And we do accept submissions for future episodes. This week's submission comes from a random tweet by Charles, just like we talked about. So feel free to tweet at Keyframers or me or Shaw with any animations that you would like to see made or any questions around State Machine Interactive, UIs, stuff like that. You can also present questions and challenges here to us, and we're going to try to answer them on the air as best as we can. So please be sure to share this video and demo across all of your social platforms.
Yes. Thank you all so much for joining us. Until next time, adios, amigos.
Adios.